All right, I'm gonna start the meeting. And turn it over to Jack Pepper Environmental Partners Group. I'm sorry, Apex Group.
Okay, so I have the agenda for today.
We
They're new company.
switched names.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't
It's
know.
not, there's not a group, it's just Apex.
So Apex acquired Environmental Partners in 2021, and it took about 4 years to make the switch,
Change the
reprint.
name. So you got rid of all the sub names and you just go.
Pretty much.
Okay, sorry.
Same people, same everything.
But they'll never be Apex to me.
Not true to me either.
After 10 years, I don't think so.
Yeah. So for today, we don't have any like decisions that we need to make. It's more of just, I wanted to give an update on kind of the main parts of the project, where the design looks like right now, and then how the schedule looks moving forward. So a lot of printouts, but the first thing is just an update on the hydrogeo report. And there are 2 maps from GHD. I think they're maybe the 4th and 5th into the pile.
Steve, Kayla is emailing you these new maps.
They're the ones with the like satellite imagery.
Nice.
4 and 5.
So I think one of our last meetings, we ironed out what we were considering phase 1, what we were considering phase 2. So on these maps, the orange is phase 1, the purple is phase 2. And with those updated parcels, this was one of the first model runs that GHD did, where they removed the septic flow from the parcels we decided on, plugged in a lot of the flow that we gave them for the collection system area, and started testing out like the different scenarios that we discussed.
Okay.
So the goal would be, I think the map with, 2, so it kind of says it on the bottoms, transfer station phase 1 and phase 2.
Yep.
With the 1 circle, that's if we took the flows from phase 1 and phase 2 and put all of it at the DPW site. That was their preliminary modeling results.
Same one.
I'm sorry, they all look.
Just the one.
This one right here. Oh, yeah. Figure 1, so,
It's on the bottom.
I have
of
2
transfer
figure
station.
2.
I have 2
Oh.
figure 2s.
figure 2.
It's the one with like the red.
What's wrong with the red square? It's the first figure.
Yeah.
So the bottom just.
So one has the squares.
This is children's place.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Then I find it.
Yeah, this is the one we're looking at.
That's.
This is just with all the, everything at the transfer
This is
station.
what we're looking at.
Yeah. So the red inlay kind of zooms in. So that's if you take all the flows.
Oh, I see the red box.
Yeah. Which the goal is to put it all at the DPW, and they're trying to run the different scenarios. And you can see on the inlay, the key number that they were looking at was that 0.1.
Yeah.
Because that's what's in the DEP regulations. So it looks kind of close, because if you hit the wetlands to the west of the site, it looks like it's around 0.2. And then on the other figure, that's where they split only phase 1 on the DPW site, and then the phase 2 flows on the children's pit site.
Okay.
And again, they said in our meeting today that they were running like 14 different scenarios, and this was kind of the first modeling maps that they had, just to show some progress. So the one on the children's place, it looks like it's more around 0.1, and that's more promising. And then if you get to the children's place, there's some concern about District H wells going out that far, and I know there are a lot more wetlands, I think, than what's shown on this map around the children's place.
Yeah.
That we'd have to.
And around those wells, like there may be wetlands between the 2 blue lines. Going towards District H. Definitely burn.
Between the 0.1 line and the 0.2 line.
Yeah.
And there are all the burnables at District H that we have to be concerned about.
So how far into the wetlands are we over here, and how much of a problem is that? With the, everything at the transfer station site?
Well, it looks like so far they're getting around 0.2 instead of 0.1, but they emphasize that these were just their preliminary numbers and it could change after they run some more scenarios. Or.
I don't understand, you said, you're showing them 0.1 line though,
Yep, the
on the
blue
blow
line.
up,
Mhm.
so what do you mean?
That's the farthest
Right.
outside, and then just surrounding those wetlands, you can see like the two circles.
Oh, those
So
are
the
the
0.1
wetlands,
matters for where it reaches the wetlands.
I see.
so is that a rigid line, I mean, could this be approved?
They seem to think, yeah, it's close enough.
So we also do the field work to see what the wetland looks like, what the status of it is, what kind of species are in there. And then we make the case to the DEP that the amount that we're putting here isn't going to impact.
I mean,
To
it
an
isn't a
irreparable
pond
level.
or it's, what do we think those two are, vernal pools?
No, I think they're just isolated wetlands.
Okay. Just low wet spots.
And excuse me for not remembering, but is this for the total flow of phase 1 and 2 or just for phase 1?
1 and 2.
1 and 2.
So that would be the goal, if we can keep everything on the DPW site.
Absolutely.
But we're limited so far by that 0.1. And then to meet the schedule, we're looking to just keep with the lower recharge rate, get that all approved, and then go back later after more modeling and ask for a higher rate. But they're still doing all of the modeling right now for the different rates.
It looks good. I mean, it looks much better than it did before, so we're moving in the positive direction.
Or I know we, I think mentioned last meeting, we were concerned about expanding phase 1 or not including all phase 2 in TWMP. But even with those higher flows, it's looking promising.
Because in the alternative with the children's place, it's not looking too promising, right?
Well, that's if phase 1 cannot accommodate, I mean, if the DPW cannot accommodate all the flows.
Yeah.
You know, children's place would be the alternate site.
But children's place has its own problems.
Yeah, but it doesn't look
Yeah.
really bad. It's just, we have to investigate more.
You better keep in mind, you're not gonna put all the flows into children's place, right?
Right.
Just the overflow. It's the stuff that the DPW cannot take.
So there could be part of phase 2 on the DPW.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But it
So
could
would
be a
that
smaller.
change this these numbers?
Seems like it would, right?
If you were to use what the children's place.
This shows a split of the
Yeah.
distribution of the F1, right?
Well, you know, I think we wait for them to run all the scenarios and then, you know, I don't think this is a finished product by all means. But this is just a conceptual, this is what they ran and they thought they could put it all in here within the
So do you
DPW
have a finished product of what phase 1 looks like?
for modeling.
Yeah. Because that's what we're going for to be, that's what we want to get approved, right?
Yeah, that's what this map is phase 1 and phase 2. And then the second one that shows on the children's place, it's just phase 1 on the DPW and just
This-
phase 2 on children's place.
I thought this said both. This is just
No, that does have both,
So
phase
cool.
1 and phase 2.
This,
Phase 1 and phase 2 at the transfer station.
this
site.
is phase 1 and phase 2, but phase 1 is at DPW and phase 2 is at the children's place. So it's two different models.
right, but I thought this was showing it's putting both of them at the same.
It is,
It is.
it is.
So the one that just shows just phase 1.
Not that we
I
have
asked a
before
stupid
us,
question.
yeah, not that we have before us.
Well, that's what the double, this one is.
So that
So
will be,
just phase 1.
Oh,
and
so I
phase
just
2.
look at this piece.
That's,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
This is, there's not a phase 2 in this piece?
correct, no. it's
All
not.
right. But if you, in reality, you'd put as much here as you could. And so this might look different.
Right,
Yeah.
so this is just a split between phase 1 and phase 2, but if we can get some of phase 2 at the DPW
Right,
to limit at the children's place,
so these numbers would reduce.
right?
Going far out in the future, phase 2, it has some potential lanes also or not?
doesn't look like it.
Doesn't look like it.
No,
Just because they're having trouble with their own capacity. You know, they have more, because when you build it, they want it, right? So they have, everybody wants it in Orleans, so I think they're getting pressure to, you know, keep the capacity they have for
themselves.
themselves.
Okay.
Especially their commercial development, and then they have three humongous housing projects. And
And I think they're ahead of the, what was projected in terms of connection and all that stuff. The phasing program, they're ahead of schedule.
Good for the finances, right?
Mm.
Rich, did they create a stabilization fund for the?
no. But I don't know if we want to use Orleans as an example, because their financing plan, while it was good on the tax base, it's very, very difficult for the residents and the businesses that are connecting.
Yeah, people are.
Because the betterments, they're getting betterments and they're getting, it's a lot. They're getting hit like 3 times, right? It's, yeah. So they pay on the tax rate, they pay a betterment, and then they have to pay to connect and maintain. So that might not be an attractive model.
No,
for us.
no, I was just asking if they use a stabilization fund in the startup phase of this thing.
No. But they also added something that I don't think we're thinking of right now, which is, they do accept affluent waste
Septic,
septic.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
Septic.
from other places, so they,
Like separate.
yes,
Yeah.
and that helped them at the beginning get some volume of.
Their recharge system is totally different from here. They rely on wick wells.
And they're having trouble with
At
those.
one of them, they have, yeah, so, but they're rated like 600,000 gallons per day. That's quite a bit, right? So,
Right now.
each well, yeah. But one of them, you know, they kind of located at a high point. Obviously, that's got good separation of groundwater. That's why you're able to use them. But one of them, I think, is giving them some trouble. I think.
Would taking septage from septic tanks be an option for us
Same option.
when we start up?
Increases the cost of the plant, it's a separate
Yeah.
operation, and then you basically put ourselves in competition with the other plants that do it, and it waters it all out amongst all of them.
It's like the marijuana stores. You know, we were doing fine until 15 more opened up.
And back in the day, we had I was in Yarmouth has a septic treatment plant. And Tri-Town had the plant, and whenever Tri-Town went offline or as it was shutting down, Yarmouth did great, did all kinds of flow, had, good revenue, good
Yeah.
cash flow. But whenever Tri-Town was up and they went down
Yeah.
half a penny, we had to go down.
They
half a
all
penny, 'cause
disappeared.
You know. all-
No, I was just thinking of it as a short-term thing where a startup.
Yeah, but it
cover
would
some
be
of the
so
startup.
expensive to build, like, we'll show you if you go to
We're gonna
Orleans.
have no flow in the beginning.
They have vacuum locked rooms and
For
special,
the
yes,
septic to get
In
pumped
Yarmouth,
because it stinks.
It's a
and this is
different-
back when it was the project was only 130 million, I think they're over 200 million now, but. Back in the early days of designing that, it would have cost like $8 or $9 million additional
Okay,
put the
that's,
septic processing capacity,
what I was
it's a
wondering.
different processing.
Yeah.
And
okay.
So the treatment will have to change because the concentration is different,
Right.
right? And the chemistry would have to change, obviously, within the plant. It can be done, but it's going
It's
to be
not a
upfront
silver bullet,
cost.
the no cost,
Yeah.
So it's probably better to do the stabilization fund and actually just use that cash
Yeah.
to get us through rather than.
see that, okay.
And Orleans is very worried about it too. They do not, obviously, they don't prefer that we do it.
But they built their plant to accommodate.
They built their
Mhm.
plant to
Spent
do
the
it.
extra 800 grand or whatever.
You know, and like some communities like Plymouth, Middleborough, it's a good revenue stream because it brings in a lot of
Charge a
customers,
lot.
right? Yeah, so, but it's cost.
And where everyone's doing wastewater, it should be going down,
The amount of
Mhm.
residential septic,
you
yeah.
think, but I don't know.
Well, we're still gonna have a lot. Even if we do phase 1 and phase 2. Cause all the parts that aren't colored are gonna have septic systems, right?
Okay, so I think for next CPC meeting, we'll have more of a, we were planning to have more models from GHD, more of an update there. And next steps for them is bringing the wetland specialist out to DPW site and then doing some of the test boring field work and getting that through DEP.
So that's for the next week they're gonna do it.
We don't have a date yet.
It was supposed to be, beginning of January towards the end of January.
That's test borings and more modeling.
Wetland evaluation.
Okay, so then the next couple of maps in the packet are also updates from GHD. Kind of go into the DPW site planning layout. Where they were doing some preliminary layouts on the recharge bed and the treatment plant building. So we did a site walk, I'm trying to remember now if that was in October, November, with DPW staff. And the goal really being to think of DPW site long term, not just into phase one. But pretty much the updates in the orange, the difference between the two maps is essentially just the aerial overlay versus not, but these are sketched out on the pad. So they originally had 4 recharge beds in the TWMP, but they expanded on that area a bit. And we were trying to make use of that test, I think they call it pit area on this map, that depressed area of the DPW. And essentially citing one of the buildings there in the southeast portion of the site. And then breaking up the treatment plant into 2 separate buildings. So the southern portion will have the batch reactors. And then farther north up the road would be some of the filter processes. And then we were looking to put administrative offices for DPW staff in that building. And I think on the aerial view, you can see it a little bit better, but in terms of trucking access, they were looking, which we'll have a meeting with DEP. This with them is sending the truck traffic from the plant through the transfer station. But only that, not accessible to the public. So that's kind of what that southern road is just for trucks. And then they'll keep the same entrance to the DPW on the northern portion of the site.
So for the public, access to the DPW remains the same.
And
I
then,
think the key point from that is, one-way traffic flow for the trucks that have to service the plant. Some of those trucks can get pretty big, so you need to provide more space to turn around if you were going in and out the same entrance or exit. So going in on the north end of the property, coming down by the plant and filters, and exiting through the transfer station.
To the current road into that,
Yeah.
to the current road into the DPW.
Yes.
Well, the good news is
That's
just,
that's this road, right?
this would be just for delivery, chemical deliveries and things of that nature. So that's like, once a month, once every couple of weeks or so, but it still requires, DEP approval for solid waste.
When they remove the sludge for the beds, that require how many trucks we need to do that to, right?
Yeah, all maintenance, chemical delivery, sludge, from the filters and from, the recharge beds you're talking about.
Yeah.
Recharge beds usually should be effluent water, clean water going in there. So maybe once a year, depending on the maintenance, you just scrape the surface, the sacrificial sand,
Not like the old Nantucket beds.
right?
It's kind of like a Zen garden.
Yeah. They're not, yeah.
I just remember it's a fairly thick layer of
Right.
sludge, you know.
Yeah, it'll build up, you're right. It will build up over time, but just scraping the surface, taking the sand off and then just, hauling that off site.
and I think as Rich pointed out, the goal here is to not use up a ton of area that for a turnaround area, so we're saving space that way. And they were also talking about the flow going into the SBR building and keeping it in that pit means that they don't have to pump it up to the building, so we can save money there.
That's the building that's the farthest south of them.
And then flow would be go over to the filters, and then from there it would get pumped into the recharge tank. Which they were saying that so far was the testing they did previously, that was the best part of the site for recharge. And then if we can accommodate phase 2 flows, that's kind of where it's up in the air. So these current recharge beds could be for phase one. But if DEP ups the flow rate, there's a potential to still use these same beds. Or if we need to put more beds where the current DPW building is. So that's kind of what they're showing. If we have to relocate the existing DPW, it goes off to the right side of that new road. So it's accounting for that, not as part of phase one, but just for future planning.
That's what the top rectangular is. Yeah.
Yep. And then they have the salt shed showing kind of on the northern part of the site as well.
So is it just as efficient and economical to have two buildings as it is to have one?
They kind of spun it also as just, it would help restrict public access.
Yeah,
There's a lot of these.
I'm thinking more about money here.
Money.
A DPW and the
No,
treatment
no,
building.
the two treatment buildings there.
Yeah, I think this is pretty common to have these buildings separated, not like together. I've seen a couple different places. You're right, maybe it's something we look into during the value engineering portion of this when we have preliminary design, kind of look at cost implications and where money can be saved. If
Right.
there's a possible scenarios where you could combine buildings, you're not impacting, process mechanical, yeah, by all means.
So you're saying there's a design reason for the separation?
Yeah, I mean, there's order, there is access, there is site limitations. We haven't really seen the reason behind it, why they're doing this. It's not stated in their basis design report, but something could be looked at during value engineering. I think it's just more of a access and having the building being separated for those reasons.
And in
But it-
Chatham, they have 3 buildings. In
Yeah.
Orleans, they have 2 buildings.
We're part of the CIP, the elevation issues, they're bringing Phil if you wanted to.
We talked about the depressed area. That's going to be needing fill, obviously, because it's just a big depression. But I think the thought process is work a balanced site where anything else is going to get excavated from preparing the beds, the subgrades for the beds, digging for the foundation for the buildings over here. All that extra fill would be used to fill the hole. I don't think they gave us an answer on the cut fill analyses. We asked that question the other day. I don't think they're that far along yet.
No, but you're right, she was hopeful that it would work out.
Balance,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's gonna be a net import. But, I mean, I don't know, maybe we could find it somewhere here that the town has, that could just move it and make the site balanced.
It never makes sense to Cape Codders to purchase sand.
We just got rid of, I don't know,
It's always
30,000
separate,
cubic yards from Hyannis, so.
I think a couple, to me, the key points on this is, we're not touching the DPW building for phase one, which means we got a rundown building that we probably can keep for another 15 or 20 years.
Pros and cons to that.
And then we are ready to maximize the site for phase two. That building's gonna need to be replaced, obviously, at some point. And we've got the space within this footprint
To
to
do
be able to accommodate that. So we know we won't need another site down the road, just gonna did wastewater here and a different site for the DPW in the future. I think it's fine.
Actually, the way this site was planned historically is pretty good, so it does a lot.
And they also saved from phase
Right.
one, initially they're putting the plant at the north side of
Yeah.
this, where we have our gas tanks, fuel pumps. And so preserving that, that's just to the right of the proposed salt shed.
And it allows us to keep that green buffer on that side too.
Adding the recharge to this facility for phase two, does that eliminate the location?
Whatever.
For the building,
It could,
yeah.
it could.
So you're offsetting the cost of relocating the DPW by not pumping over to the other. location.
Possibly.
So there is a chance also, we did discuss it with them the other day. What's not really shown here is a pump station in case the DPW site is not able to accommodate all the flows. And then some of the flows would have to, or the effluent, I should say, split over to the children's place. So we would need a pumping station and a sewer force main to kind of convey the flow from here, or the extra flow that cannot be
Accommodated.
recharged here, and then we have to kind of ship it over to the children's place.
Phase two.
Yeah, and and I know back to your question early on, I agree 100%. If you combine the buildings, combining the buildings probably not going to make that much of a big difference if you're able to go vertical. That's how you save money, because you less foundation work and less everything. So this is just a matter of having the ability to kind of maneuver in between and separate the filter building from the SBRs from the actual building itself where the offices are located. Yeah. But we will ask that question to see if there is a way to kind of consolidate them better.
Rich, I know this is a sensitive subject, but if we remove the admin offices and those types of things you want to put in there, is that something that you've got in your back pocket if we have to try to drop the cost of this thing? Or is that hiding and sealing it with?
You could do that.
I don't know if that would save us that much.
I don't know, that's
I don't know. I think
substantial. I forget what we told them we needed. You know, a meeting room.
conference room.
5 offices.
And
Yeah.
12 offices.
It's not really going to matter to the footprint much. It just small adder, but yeah.
Just on it.
Question system design. So this is where we have more of the updates. That's what the next 3 maps have to do with. I guess starting a little bit with the middle map that has all of the arrows. That gray outline is the entire phase 1 area. And I mean, this is it. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is the dark green, the light green, and the yellow, all combined.
Yes, yeah, great. So for collection systems, you're either gonna have gravity sewer or low pressure sewer. And the gravity sewer would be at differing depths that we were looking into, larger pipes, and then lower pressure sewer is only 5 feet deep, smaller pipes. And with the low pressure sewer is where you have grinder pumps at each property versus you don't have to have that as gravity. So the update we have so far on this map is just our preliminary design. We were looking at the different alternatives, different options. And this map essentially illustrates what the different pipe types are and how we looked into that. So the gray is all of phase 1 area for reference. Then the orange parcels are town-owned parcels. The pink parcels are where we were eyeing some pump station locations. And then the stars also just more within that parcel where we were gonna put them. And then the different color arrows are dark purple is gravity sewer that's less than 15.5 feet. And then the light purple is if it's greater than 15.5 feet, because we were trying to look at the different, keeping it to under 15 feet is more ideal. The deeper you are, the larger the excavation you're gonna have to have and trench boxes and it adds kind of that cost
Cost.
and construction's more disruptive. You can't get as high production. I mean, the whole water system, everything's 4.5, 5 feet deep, so they could get hundreds of feet done a day, but the deeper you have to go, the less production. And then the flow arrows just showing you go from low pressure into gravity, and then it goes into the pump station, and we didn't show the force mains that would pump from the pump stations to the treatment plant.
That'll be map 4.
And the other kind of charts we had on, so in the bottom right corner was there are 778 parcels in the area. And so far, we're looking at around 71,000 feet. And breaking down 613 for gravity, 155 for low pressure. And this design, what we looked at so far was where can we maximize gravity? Just to start with, and how much would that be? And then the top parcel or table just lists all the parcels for the 7 pump station locations. So their addresses, who owns them, what would be the benefit that we gain by putting a pump station there? And then are there any alternatives? And that's where, with this kind of planning, we can go into what are the cost implications of going this deep, or, okay, if we put a pump station, I think like the first pump station on State Highway, if we're able to put a pump station there, we can make all the northern part of Route 6 and south below it into gravity. That's kind of why the table says 9,566 linear feet. So that lets us shift from low pressure to gravity if we have that pump station there. So this was kind of just us going through the thought process of how do we break it up? What pump station location we could use, and then what are the benefits of each, and then we can turn that into kind of a cost analysis. And see what our different options are. So I think a couple of them, like, we were looking at the children's place. What if we put a pump station there? You can get Chester Ave, gravity. Could we consider something on the Council on Aging if Children's Place isn't a good site? Or we were looking at, say, Pump Station 5 by the Visitor Center. What if we put one there versus the elementary school? Are those 2 options? How does that change? Different pipe types, things like that.
How many pump stations were originally envisioned in the conceptual? 4. What caused the,
Well, they
outside
had,
of design, what caused?
yeah,
the
they
big
had a
thing?
lot of low pressure sewer,
Okay,
yeah. So, and then obviously the area had increased quite a bit, right? So, we've expanded it quite a bit so that, you have a lot of changes in topography, which, we actually trying to limit the depth of excavation. Couple of things that troubling with deeper excavation. The validity of the pipe would be, compromised because the more weight you have on top of the pipe, the pipe's kind of squished, right? At that depth. And then also, whether you're looking at Route 6 or you're looking at any of the existing roadways, you don't want to have to be 15, 20 feet deep and then things are going to start collapsing on you. Not to mention the cost associated with putting sewer at that depth, right? Production is going to be super low. The price is going to be super high when somebody's going to look at it like, well, what am I going to do? Dig 20 feet down on Route 6, right? You're going to be taking a lane from each direction for just to be able to put the sewer in and everything else. So there's cost implications, but yeah, long term would be, I think they had 4 in the TWMP.
Right.
They have about 4, but then I think most of Route 6 was on low pressure. That's the way they had it.
I think we did talk about 5 at one. I mean, I
Right.
think they were talking 4, maybe 5.
I mean, in fairness to them, I don't think they put the level of, they were just looking
No.
conceptually, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
here we're looking at, the various case scenarios and trying to maximize, but you look at the ratio, that Jackie was talking about, the, low pressure, 155 out of the 778, that's a pretty good ratio there, right? So, and then we talked about earlier today, yes, we do show 7, but, but some of them, if they have very low flows, we may end up mixing those, right? And just maybe change the approach there and then just go into, low pressure sewer. Because a pump station that only sees small amount of flows, it's just gonna be troubling long term, right? Because the pumps need to turn on quite a bit and a minimum twice an hour. And then you don't want the wet well to go septic, right? So if it's just low flow and it's not gonna see any future expansion, you might as well not even have one there.
What's low pressure?
Low pressure is, if you have a house that's on a low line area there, and then the pipe is up here or
Yeah.
the grade is up here, you have to pump the flow from the house up to this line, whether it's a gravity or it's just a low pressure. It's a small pump that pushes the flow through an 1.5 inch
Is it a
pipe.
grinder pump? Is it
It's a
something
grinder pump,
different? Those are grinder pumps.
Yeah. And let's say a bunch of grinder pumps come together into a main pressure line, low pressure line, right? They'd be pushing the flow into a 2-inch or 3-inch along one alignment, and from there on, it goes into gravity.
Right, once it gets up to high enough.
Right.
Out of curiosity, who owns that grinder pump when they put them on? 150 different houses.
It's a hot potato.
Yeah.
Chatham
Chatting
is
about that
fighting that battle, yeah.
So a couple of cases where the town continues or municipality continues to own them, but because they're be located at the foundation, next to the house, usually most cases you see that the owner purchases the pumps, pays for the installation, and then when it's done, the homeowner will take it over. So the operation, maintenance, and issues with it long term would be on the owner. Because technically, if you're only doing gravity sewer, and then you put in gravity sewer within, let's say, Main Street, you bring the stub up to the property line, and then from the property line up to the house, it's the owner's responsibility.
If we buy it once and it breaks, do we buy it a second time?
If it's-
Just asking.
Within the warranty period, it's on the contractor.
Okay.
Anytime beyond the warranty period, it becomes the owner's
So
responsibility.
we buy it for them once.
That's it.
Okay.
You buy it for them, you pay for the cost of installation,
Yeah.
and you turn it over to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
I think that's a decision point at some point. We talk about the financing of this. You wanna take that on as a project cost or not for the grinder pumps. Some towns don't.
What are their costs for that?
A lot.
The grinder pumps. So, there are a couple different, there's a lot of brands out there.
Just-
I mean, they go from $3,000 a unit to about $10,000 a unit just to purchase, right? And now you're gonna have to pay for the cost of excavation, installation, there's electrical panel by the foundation there, and then you're gonna have to hook it up to the main line.
And a generator, maybe.
Hmm?
And a generator, maybe.
No,
You don't want it to turn
because it
off.
has to, when the power's not.
The SRF application contained money for the grinder pumps, so.
Including installation.
Is it inline pump or a grinder pump or does it?
It's a prepackaged
box?
cylinder, and with just a flat top, and has a pump inside of it with just a PVC pipe going out and an access
So a
point.
little bit of a container.
But you don't see anything above grade, except for the electrical. Usually it's set up in the landscape area. I mean, we just talked about, can they make them H20? Perhaps they can, but most of the
Driveway.
applications, yeah.
Yeah.
And if
You don't know if they make H20?
I think they do.
Yeah.
I think they do, yeah. But it has to be like a separate, would not be a plastic container, it'd be like almost of a manhole thing.
Right.
And then just an insert will go inside the manhole.
It would increase the cost.
It would increase the cost. Well, it'd be like a precast manhole, but then you have to take the
Bad.
guts of
Yeah.
the station and just
The only
put it.
place to put it was in the driveway.
Right.
And-
Yeah.
And maybe, to make a mess of your yard, so you can see what people made out for that.
Yeah.
So it's a grinder pump, pumping it uphill,
Mhm.
but then did you say it pumps to a low pressure main? Is there such a thing? Or once it gets up there, it's gravity?
Pumps into a main, and that main can also be low pressure. So every pump comes on, there's a check valve, so the flow doesn't come back towards but every time the pumps comes on, or every house that's connected to it pumps the flow into that pipe, which is a low pressure. It just basically,
Because it's still heading up.
it's a displacement of fluid, right? And once, it goes to the point where now it's gonna dump into a gravity sewer,
Yeah,
that's
it's
when it
gravity.
goes. For pressure to
And
gravity.
the pump is just the combined effort of all those individual pumps that causes the pressure to
Correct,
shoot up through the main.
correct. Not a big pipe or anything, like usually, depending on how many customers are on the line, right? You size the main line, and you'll have to have manholes with access points to be able to flush the line in case there is stoppage or anything.
How big?
The manhole?
Pipe,
Oh, for most cases, it would be 2 to 3 inches.
inches.
Because the
it's
pumps, the
ground.
grinder pumps, it grinds all the
Wow.
fluid in there, yeah.
But the gravity bands are bigger than that, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, no, gravities we need to size the gravity based on the amount of
10.
flow going in there. Usually for the most part, you're gonna see, 8-inch, 10-inch, some places you see some 6 inches and dead ends, things like that, but nothing less than 6.
It's minimum. And then, Question. I'll think of it later.
I think,
Oh, the 15 feet, sorry. So the reason there's so many pump stations, we're trying to keep everything up a little higher, because we don't wanna go down 20 feet. But what sort of, what's the depth are we shooting for, the deepest depth? Of
the gravity source
of the pipes, yeah.
of the pipe, yeah, so that's what,
Sweet spot for the depth.
yeah, we were willing to go up to no more than 20 max, including overdig, no more than 20. Yeah,
Are these feet, these are feet on this?
Yeah, is
map,
that
right?
what these numbers are? 17.6, and
yep, so if it's,
that's how deep the
If
main
it's
would be in
deeper
those
than-
locations?
yeah, if it's deeper than 15.5, then.
Oh, then
for
you
different
marked it
segments,
out.
I have the numbers.
Everything that's not marked is above 15, or 15.5.
I didn't notice this before, but on Route 6. Just south of Brackett Road, it goes down pretty deep, but then it's not as deep. How does that, those are all gravity, right? So-
because of the road grade, right, topography there.
So
It
that's,
goes really downhill around.
Yeah.
so-
that's
Oh,
kind of the point of this map.
So the depth, so it's the depth of the hole in that.
Depth of the pipe.
Oh, yeah.
The pipe will continue to be sloped at a specific slope rate,
Right.
but because of the road grade, it's gonna change. I mean, you see a pipe like that, but then the road does that.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the goal, of providing the contour sheet. And that's why we set it up this way, kind of the first question, gravity is more ideal because you don't have to deal with grinder pumps and then get resident, so that's why we started looking at gravity. And you can see kind of from the contour map, it shows that's just from LiDAR, 3-foot LiDAR data, and then the town-owned parcels. To kind of get a sense where are the low spots in that area, because that's where we put the pump stations at the low spots, so that it can flow by gravity. And then the behind the scenes of this map is, I forget how many sheets we have, I wanna say it was 120 so far, so in AutoCAD, we have the whole area laid out with the LiDAR data. We have all the piping in and then all of the profiles of the road and the elevations. So I think it was like 120 sheets. And that's where these depths kind of come from, because you can look at the profile of the road, so in some spots you have to go really deep and some shallow.
Yeah.
So that was kind of our first pass to say, we wanna do gravity, what will it take to get it, how many pump stations, how deep are we gonna go? And then kind of building on what Ziad said on this map with the different areas, that's where we said, okay, if we want to get gravity on Mill Road, we could put a pump station number 7. But then we look at the number of parcels, it's only 38, it's only 3,000 gallons. Pump stations themselves, I think, can be around at least $1 million, so then we look. Okay, is it worth building a pump station here based on the location, the cost versus just switching to low pressure?
Right.
But starting with this analysis of what our different options are, basically.
The software dictate the design, and you guys check it afterwards, and you just change the criteria on depths to see economics and stuff. How do you start out on your design?
So we build in, yeah, I can add to it, but, so we use the AutoCAD program and we can pull in like the MassGIS data laters for these parcels, the right of ways, we pulled in the LiDAR data, and then we use different tools within AutoCAD, like there's a pipe alignment tool where we can build the code and all of our criteria for
The
it.
grades?
Yep, and then that kind of gives us a basis and it can create, we can use it to create the profiles, but then it's more, that kind of gives you your general parameters, but then it's not really meant to like design it on, because we'll have manholes every certain amount of feet and there's a lot of, then you kind of go in manually and say, these were my basic requirements. Also, we don't have the pipe sizes completely figured out, so that pipe size would indicate the slope. We can set what pitches we want to have of the pipe, and then we manually kind of check that. And then shift things around.
Yeah, and some other factors go into it too. Today, we started doing the layout for the borings, and we have survey. Jackie will go into the details on our subs and when we're doing what we do and when. Groundwater plays a big role in this, and if you're dealing groundwater and then you're at greater depth, 10, 15, 20 feet, that's just gonna be counterproductive, because you'd be asking for trouble, right? So that's when you come back to the drawing boards, like, well, this isn't working here, because that's gonna cost a fortune and, could compromise a lot of different things. So this is when you change your approach and say, this may not work, maybe we should go to something different. But generally speaking, again, nobody wants to see a pipe that is 25, 30 feet deep, because they're just not realistic, right? So I think it's just gonna be a trial by, looking, where's the fine line here between how deep we're willing to go, while considering cost, right? Cost implications. I know you have the upfront cost versus O&M cost. Pump stations, grinder pumps and low pressures come also with some O&M, right? And there's some cost associated to buy the grinder pumps to install it, whereas, gravity sewer, yes, you pay the cost up front, but then you forget about it.
Phase one is, am I right, higher elevations, so maybe groundwater won't be too much of an issue. Phase two, there's high water table there.
Yeah. The pump stations too also, and that's where we talked to the driller this morning. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but we have these 7 we need to know.
They have to be, yeah.
You have to be deep, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to also worry if you're in groundwater, they could potentially float too. So you have to have design against buoyancy, so they don't float. You want to make sure that water doesn't come into the pump station, right? You're not just basically cycling
groundwater.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it, but the due diligence from our end to, do the borings to see what type of supportive excavation would be required, what type of dewatering would be needed when we do when we go to construction. The ease of construction, I mean, I'm sure we have a lot of information from the water system, which Jackie had been working on for the last 10 years, so that would come very handy. But then again, this is
10 feet below that though.
This is new territory, yeah. I mean, if you're going to install a pump station 20 feet below grade, you probably want to go, with the borings down to 40 feet to see what's below that, right? I don't think we're gonna find ledge here, rock or bedrock, but
find a boulder here.
yeah.
That's the one good thing.
Does, sea level rise and potential infiltration into a aquifer affect future water levels that might infiltrate pump stations?
100%, not just the pump station, maybe a prepackaged pump station, not so much subject to sea level rise, but then of course, when you design it for buoyancy, you're gonna take that into account because you design it with groundwaters at surface. When you design something for buoyancy, you assume groundwater is sitting at surface, and then just an empty, body of whatever the pump station is. But when the water comes up 2 feet above grade, you have to design for the electrical to be above that projected sea level at that, 2070. This is what we're looking at today. But that would have to be taken into account for sure.
But sea level rise does affect the level of groundwater as well.
Correct.
Affects everything.
Yep. Let's say you have a generator that's, like either an enclosure. Let's just say the pump station is just like this pre-package, goes below grade, be sticking 6 inches out of the ground. But then somewhere in here at grade, you have to build a pad with a generator, right? Where the control panels and electrical connection is going to be. So if sea level rise is going to be at this location, you have to build it enough to make sure that it's above that projected sea level rise by 27. So we have that information anyway.
What do they figure sea level is gonna rise between now and 2070? What?
I know we did some flood walls in Plymouth and Marshfield, and I think it was elevation 15, it's about 3 feet. Yeah, by 2070.
That's what we got to.
3 feet.
Not really.
That's why we had to put the harbor master building at Rock Harbor
I know,
a mile up in the air.
we're gonna get this finished right before we go underwater.
And why the water contracts for, the seashore district?
Right. Oh, that's part of it.
Part of the problem.
What are the colors on this one represent?
Oh, yeah, the different, I guess you call them sewer shed areas, so all the parcels that would flow into each pump station.
Pump stations, okay.
So that's where we can, I mean, you can visually see the first pump station, which we are eyeing, the Elks Lodge, how many parcels that serves and how important it would be to get that versus, I think what I was saying earlier, seven, it's
Seven,
just such a small area.
So one's got all the flows.
And these are just, so the way we got these flows are from the analysis we did before about assigning it to each parcel. And these are the average annual, so they'll be lower in the winter.
Or higher in the summer, so that's the trade-off.
Well, it seems like 6 is gonna be a high water table situation. It's like-
6.
Yeah, right across the street is Salt Pond.
Yeah, and again, we nothing unusual. We could put a station there. We haven't really looked into what type of stations we're looking for, whether it's just a prepackaged, something with even if we have to do like either precast, we could encapsulate the whole thing so it's not taking in water. We all know that concrete is semi-pervious. It's it may allow the water to seep in, especially the joints. So we could wrap the joints. We could do a bunch of different things, but we haven't gone that far yet.
And things get much closer
The
to
road here is almost
sea level as we go south.
Correct.
The phase 2 is much more.
But it can go up on the road.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do you build the pipe size going back to the plant for phase 2 into account now? For those flows?
From the phase 2 area,
Yeah.
like a force main, you mean?
Yeah, so this doesn't have to be dug up again later type stuff.
No, I mean, we may take a separate alignment. I mean, we'll take that into consideration, but to build it, I don't know if it makes sense to do it now. I think you just basically plan it, but you don't build it.
Or down the phase 2 years once.
We, 15 years maybe?
15.
we wouldn't tie into,
It could be tied into one pump station, yeah. Like one of the existing pump stations. You could just pump into a pump station and the other one will just,
but the pipe's gonna be big enough. I guess that's Steve's question.
And have we done calculations on phase 2 flows? Yeah, or not?
Yes, we did
And
that.
how did they compare to phase 1?
I think phase 1 was 135,000 gallons per day and phase 2 was 85,000.
Okay.
And that makes sense because phase 2 is much more residential. There's no commercial building parcels.
And those numbers are from the water usage data that we did use, and then any undev or dev parcels we looked into and assigned a value in case something's built there. And then the flow memo that we should be getting, I think next week from GHD is where they take that number. It's water usage, so they'll use 90% of it, and then we talked about adding like a 15% fluff factor for the rezoning on Route 6 or just normal increase in water usage. And then that's where they'll convert it to a number that determines the plants and the secrets and batch reactors. And they already had talked about with the SVRs, looking at those sizes and leaving space for the contingency ones in phase 2 already, factoring that into account. I feel like they said 3 in the meeting, the SVR between the two phases. So these are our preliminary basis of design maps that we were starting with, just looking for all alternatives, but then, like the Ed mentioned, just kind of go through our subs and the next steps, that way kind of refine this a little more. We have the preliminary layout, which And the way they connect is we wanted to have these fleshed out enough that when the subs go to do the work, that we're in the right spot. So preliminary net layout and then existing position survey, so we're using VNet surveyor to do all the survey. So they'll be collecting just everything within the roads and specifically also, the house sills for each property. So that would be the key part that we need from the survey for the design. So we're having a kind of work meeting with them sometime this month, and then they're looking to start the first week of February. And they could go until maybe end of May or into June, depending on the weather. But they're doing it piecemeal, so every 2 weeks they'll be able to give us their results so we can keep moving forward in the design, so it doesn't impact the schedule. And we already have everything laid out based on LiDAR, so when we get that data, a lot of it will just be, we have the records request from all of the utilities, we get the survey, we get the utilities in, and that's when we can more fine tune where exactly we wanna put the pipe in the road and get a little more accurate elevations, and then we get the sill elevations for the sewer lateral designs. And we did also have, I don't know if I was here, kind of as part of that, the private markout company, GPRS, supposedly coming in the next week or two, where they use the ground penetrating radar. And we identified, I wanna say it was 20 different roads from, and we noticed this on the water project, where they have private electric that Eversource doesn't mark out or doesn't give us records for. So doing that field work, we'll be able to put them in the plans and not have like massive change orders later. Because we didn't have that electric info. And then they'll go before the surveyor, so then the surveyor can pick up all their flags, because they'll just mark out everything. Except, we didn't have them mark out water, we have that to save on that.
The other depths on the, other lines, so
Approximate.
approximately.
Yeah. I don't think it works like into, like if you have a duct bank, like, all the duct banks are 20 feet deep, but let's just say you have a pipe about 20 feet, it may give you some sense of there's something here, but it's not that accurate. It's not really accurate with depth. It only gives you stuff that is closer to the surface.
So with this work, we think that prior to those are a couple of good opportunities to do some public outreach. So we'll be crafting a couple of messages to put out, to let people know that this work's happening, so when people see surveyors and boring companies and people putting holes in the footwork, they know what it's all about, but it's also a way to educate them about the projects moving forward and we're getting ready. So we try to craft some good communications on at least those two things.
With survey, and then I think as he had mentioned, the geotechnical borings, we started doing the dig safe markouts today for that. And I think what I mentioned before, we wanted to get far enough along in the design, because the borings, they'll give us groundwater depth, and we expect to get sand, but just so we can plan out, the excavation conditions. So what we did was we took all of the borings that we did for the water project on a separate map and kind of laid out where all of them were, so we don't also do those same areas, and we have that data. And then we wanted to look at the possible breakdown between gravity and low pressure, because if we're doing gravity, we want the borings to 20 feet, but if we're doing low pressure, we can save and just do 10 feet for those borings.
The other ones that you previously had, do they go that deep or not? They
Most
don't?
of them were 10 feet.
Yeah.
We had a handful, maybe like 10 or so that were 20 feet.
Yeah,
And then we wanted to be strategic on some of the locations, like a lot of the water borings we did were on the side of the road on Route 6, whereas we were kind of eyeing the center line of the road, because the elevations matter more for sewer.
how far do you go between test
Borings.
borings? Is there a general rule?
Yeah,
Or-
I mean, usually if the subsoils are changing, the strata is changing, you want to be closer, but if it's just all consistent, we targeting somewhere around 300 feet
Okay,
between borings. Yeah. Like I know
but you're looking at it daily to make judgment calls along.
yeah, like on
Yeah.
as we go, right?
Yeah.
Street by street, location by location. But when we get into the pumping stations, those are just gonna be more detail oriented. The other ones are gonna be done with a geoprobe, which just basically drive the tube down to 20 feet based on 5 foot increments, sample across, look at the soil profile, know where groundwater is gonna be. Whereas the pumping stations, we're gonna have to collect blow counts and resistance, turn the boring into a monitoring well to see how high the groundwater table is and, what type of um, issues that we're gonna have during construction to kind of design for. Because pump station is gonna require supportive excavation and dewatering and, going down 20 feet deep, maybe more. So they're just more involved as opposed to just putting a gravity pipe 20 feet deep or 50 feet deep, I should say.
We don't need the environmental sampling, but we are collecting, we'll characterize the whole boring depth, but then we're also collecting samples that we'll submit to the lab and kind of see the analysis and the particle distribution, so then we can make decisions on the material that they use for construction and bringing in processed gravel and how they'll have to mix it in.
We also do want a screening on any potential DEP sites, like a former gas station that may have existed along the alignment and potentially if any contaminated soils that could be encountered during the excavation. And we're just doing a due diligence ahead of time on that.
What happens if you hit a contaminated soil?
If we hit contaminated soil, we'll have a line item in the contract about soil management, getting rid of it, screening it, testing it and see where it fits, whether a landfill could take it or has to be shipped out of state, depending on the characterization of that. Usually that, between the borings and, I think we have a PNID with during drilling, when they sample the stuff, if there's a smell, any solvent, any, potential sheen that you see in the soil, that would raise the red flag, right? And this is when we start focusing on the characterization. But if it's just all consistent,
Does the town have records of past?
DEP does.
DEP?
So what we do is we go on the DEP website and we do a desktop review of potential sites along the alignment.
Did we run into any with water?
On the water main?
During water, we didn't run into it.
No.
And we didn't have any bones or pottery shards or anything either. We were lucky.
That's good. Is there any leak up there at Nickerson, the old Nickerson station?
No, they consider that a remediated site. So it's all the tank, I think they actually went back in and removed the tank and removed the soil as well.
And there wasn't one.
We do have PFAS in that area moving.
Oh, great. Yeah, there's another one, but it's phase
Down
two.
there, me?
Down phase two, yeah.
No.
Yeah, and that's been a long.
Do we
time.
own that property? No.
We don't own it. It's still in private ownership and I don't have a report or anything on that site.
I remember Sheila complaining about it, right?
I remember
It's right
they
there.
shut them down, because I think
Yes.
there was a leak there.
And then the other one is up in north past tea time on the right-hand side where the turnip stand used to be.
It's a gas station.
That was a gas station too.
Not one of these things.
So I guess in terms of schedule, I don't know if I mentioned for the boring, so we started marking them out today. Called in dig safe, and then we were eyeing the 27th the earliest for them to start. And it'd probably be about 3 weeks of work. They would do 10-hour days.
4 days, 4 10-hour days, correct?
And then obviously we'll collect all the results, put together a geotech report on all of the results, and then modify the design based on that.
So the borings include that ground penetrating, or is that different?
No, the ground penetrating thing is just the machine that you scan, you kind of run it. It's like almost a lawnmower or something, you walk behind things and they scan the ground and they generate the report. Borings is just drill, yeah.
But it's in that same phase, right?
It's the same phase, separate contractors, yeah. The one thing that Jackie mentioned, all our subs are under contract and they're ready to go. Like the driller was supposed to, he was angry, not angry, but he was like, I'm disappointed that he can't go on the 20th. He wanted to go, and we just said, look, we need to socialize it with the butters and, stakeholders, and we can't just simply show up.
But you're gonna be, we were drilling, like you said, on the side of the road for water, right? Yeah,
We,
A
in
lot of
the,
the ones in Route 6 we did. On
Oh.
the side of the road.
on the side, yeah, in Route 6, we're probably gonna be doing on the center line. This is where the sewer's gonna go. So that would have to be,
but when you get into some of these other streets, you're gonna still be on the center line?
yes.
But we did do the center line and more of the side roads. I think we just avoided Route 6 for the water.
Now, if there's a situation where you have a water main that was in the center line of the roadway, obviously we're gonna have to offset left or offset right with the gravity. But the ideal situation when you
Route
run,
6 is on one lane.
Huh?
Route 6 is in one lane, right? We were gonna do both lanes at one point in time, but we only did the one.
I mean, Route 6, we're considering the center line, exactly. That's what we're gonna be with the trunk line.
And most of the roads, we did one side or the other, didn't we?
Yes,
Pretty much. And then the dirt roads, a lot of them just ended up down the middle, just so we didn't have to trim all the trees on both sides.
So now we have to do it.
I think we were eyeing around 150 borings.
this is one benefit of doing like a brand new water system from scratch and then doing wastewater. Because at least it's all really well mapped out. So we may get surprises, but we're not gonna get surprises from our own
Right, so.
water system.
This is not
And
Nantucket.
we don't have any, Native American issues, right? with this.
Well, we already
And
dug
that-
up all
right,
these areas,
spared all
right?
these,
So that's the thing. I mean, if,
And we have the same company that's coming out and doing it, so they've pretty much dug up every street
Every street
of
in town.
concern.
I mean, even the tribes would tell you, if this has already been disturbed, they don't really have any concerns with it. So,
So we do have the archaeologists under contract to do their kind of reevaluation or anything else they need to do, updates from everything we did for the water. We'll also have our wetland scientists come out and delineate anything in this area for the survey to pick up. That's only like a day or so of work and she writes her report. So a lot happening in the next month or so. All of our subs. Okay, I'll just jump right to a few more big picture items. I think I put them under schedule. Was that the end of this month?
Thank you. Question on the DPW site planning. Have they progressed further than site layout at this point? Where do they stand on the design? They haven't.
They've just done preliminary site layout, and I know one thing we were interested in is just getting their surveyor out. So everything in their design plan is just from LiDAR as well, it's not survey. So from getting the survey, then we can get more of a cut fill analysis, and when they get farther along in the actual, cause even like the building sizes aren't particularly accurate on these maps. Yeah.
they're just blocks on figure, right? That's what they are.
And you're not overseeing that part,
Yes.
the design part. They-
We are,
The
yeah.
design as well as the
So
construction.
they
Yeah.
owe
Okay.
us soon,
Yeah.
the design.
They're due to submit, I think on the 3rd of March, the first week of March.
Yeah.
Right, so
Submit what?
So there's
30%.
30% of the,
30% done.
yeah.
On the what, the 5th of March?
The
Okay.
3rd, I think the first week of March.
First week.
So the big submissions on our end is when we get the borings done, we can do the geotech report and get closer to our 30% or more of a basis of design report. Then at the end of this month, we were looking at the cost estimates for town meeting, getting those first drafts done.
End
Or
of,
the collection system, right?
For both.
Combined,
end of this month?
they're one package to go on SRF, yeah.
They are preliminary cost estimates.
So if you don't have the,
30%.
yeah, how are you gonna do that?
Well, they have, in the TWMP, they have a cost estimate, associated with the plant, and they're gonna scale it up to, with an appropriate contingency based on the level of effort they have today. Based on the square foot.
But we now have data that we didn't have before, like 71,000
Right,
feet
we
of
have,
pipe.
Yeah, but that's collection, I'm talking about the.
Oh,
This is a lot easier, you're right. I mean, the treatment plant itself, they do have a figure that they carried in the TWMP, and I think they're gonna scale it up based on the new layout that they have based on the footprint of the buildings that they had proposed. And they're gonna, assign to it a good healthy contingency.
Right. Contingency will get smaller when the.
Correct.
design gets
But
developed.
that number might be adjusted after they actually give you the 30%.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, right now, we did talk about the 30%. This is when you either continue with the plan or you just want to do your value engineering. And if you need to depart from the, make changes, that's the time when you make changes. Beyond that, that's it. Just, you keep going. So,
If you back up from town meeting. Print date. Length of time it does, takes you to do an estimate, reconcile, value engineering. When does that number have to be done? I'm just saying, can you wait until the end of February for a cost estimate? Do we have enough time?
I think they
Do you
need
have better information? Or do you have to have it done by the
You
end
can
of the
send
month?
me, one of the,
Goes to the printer
First.
around April
First
1st,
of April.
plus or minus a couple days.
right until the end of March, we can change the number that ends up in the town meeting warrant. So you kind of want to know something to work from, so we can start conditioning everybody for it,
Well, when do we have to go to print?
April 1st.
April 1st, or the first week in April.
So if they submit their basis design and then the cost estimate with that, first week of, March, we have time to kind of look into that. And in our scope, we do have a professional cost estimator looking at this cost estimate, right? So can we turn it around within 3 weeks? Perhaps we can.
Well,
We could
because
put-
look at it as he does own independent.
He's
cost.
gonna have an independent,
His own
yeah,
independent,
but he needs
yeah.
their 30% design
Right.
to do that.
And I forget, do you do value engineering at that point or at
Yes.
60?
No, at
At
30%.
After the estimate's done.
Well, yeah, they submitting a package that includes a cost estimate as well.
Right.
I think they're giving us a cost estimate before then, right? That's what we talked about with them.
Yeah, but then
Yeah,
it's not.
right.
Well, we did submit, we did an updated cost estimate for SRF in August.
Mhm.
So that was after the TWP. And then I know for our estimate, now we have bids from Dennis and Yarmouth that we can just
Oh.
remember.
Comparables.
So you
those are
use that
good,
as a
'cause they're
base
closer.
and you assign some, because there's a, assuming this is gonna bid in 2026, right? So you have that
Yeah,
contingency that you have to
absolutely.
carry there, yeah.
Obviously, we don't wanna make it too high, but I think something that really helped the water project is that we were always under the appropriation.
It's
So when
always,
things
it's
came
always
up, it wasn't.
great to
Yeah.
deliver that news.
Yes.
And in our sales effort, we should point to that.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I mean, I do hope, I think that the argument against water that we could not manage this larger construction project, I mean, I think that was a fair concern that people had, right? So it wasn't like an unfair thing. But I think now we do have a track record, which hopefully will eliminate that concern.
Right.
They'll have other concerns, but eliminate that one.
And we have an OPM this time. We didn't have an OPM for water.
Yes, we did. We just didn't call
Call
it
it
an
the
OPM
Cause it was not,
because we had it the whole time. We had an extra robust presence of
yeah, I don't think
the
water though,
engineering plus. It wasn't the engineering light, it
Yeah.
was the engineering plus.
I mean, you don't have, technically the water did not really require one.
Right.
If you didn't.
Horizontal. Right.
Yeah, it was horizontal and, this one here, you have the treatment component, the building, vertical construction, anything above $1.5 million requires an OPM.
And this is much more complex, there's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
So it's good that we're doing it second.
Yeah, to that point, the pipe's gonna be like 2.5 times deeper than the water lines. So, what's the level of, change orders and stuff that you encounter in a project like this? Are they?
With the
dealing
collection
with-
system, the only
Yeah.
thing that you would be worried about is unforeseen conditions, meaning, You know,
You said there wasn't water here and there is, that kind of thing.
I mean, if you have a conflict, then you're gonna have to revise your design on the fly, and then, it's the only time you'll run into issues like that, but usually if a collection system,
If the bids come in and they're pretty, the final cost is pretty.
oh,
close.
one thing we're looking to do here is, split, even phase one, we split it into two separate projects, because you can make a competitive bidding and then allow more people to enter the pool, right? Kind of makes sense, I think, I hope you agree with that assessment, otherwise.
Phase one collection.
A collection system, yeah, split it into a minimum two. I mean, it's a sizable project, right?
Yeah.
I forget what we had.
We had good luck with it on water.
What you did, 5 or?
Yeah.
How many?
Well, the
Well, we
historic,
were
like,
trying to keep it in like $5-6 million
Yeah.
contract, right?
The problem with this though is that, it's like the tank contracts. I mean, the treatment plant is one contract, right? You
Correct,
can't
right,
split that.
No,
Yeah, split it, right.
And that's gonna be the,
But digging up the whole, we didn't want to dig up the whole town, we were digging
Right.
up in different areas, right? And
especially where
split
it
up
takes so much
contracts out.
longer. It really is.
Mhm.
Like some of the other towns, I've even noticed it, driving through other towns. Oh my God, they're still on that road. There is a road in Dennis that has been closed down for like 3 months.
Yeah.
How about Locust Street?
Oh, yeah, I've been on that detour
Right?
a bunch of
It's
times.
like,
It's been a long
what are
time.
they doing on that road?
Right. I know. It's taken a while.
Yeah,
though.
the big.
I don't know whether it's a drainage or a culvert project or a wastewater project.
So at least two contracts.
Minimum
maybe
two, yeah,
more, right?
yeah, right.
do you
I think it's a
survey
good
the
idea.
contractors ahead of time to find out the capabilities and what their potential, what they can do to try
Yeah.
to get more local versus
So like,
stuff,
the plant is gonna go through pre-quals,
right?
because, one, it's more than $10 million, and then you're gonna have to do file sub bids and the general contractors, right? So it's gonna go through the pre-quals that way. The collection system, it's just based on experience, right? So the track record. Usually you gotta know the players, who's gonna be bidding this. You wanna make it competitive. I know a lot of people now coming on Cape. Like in the past, it used to be just, Robert B. Hour and CC Construction, like kind of dominating this
Right.
market. Today you saw
Now
like
they're
RJV just won a big job in Dennis. I have a big job with RJV in Hyannis, right? And a lot of people just coming this way. This is where the work is.
And it's
They're
good that
becoming
they're
more-
coming.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
It gives us a little bit of.
Absolutely, yeah.
So do all our water contractors do this type of work, I assume?
Most of them do, yeah.
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 So they know us and you,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's a good thing.
They have to be bonded.
Mhm.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah.
So the smaller the more contracts, maybe the better. You can get more guys.
To
that are
be able
bonded
to,
up
yeah.
That level.
Yeah, for sure. I forget what was not to put you on the spot, was like, what, 14? Or how much was the cost for the, 14, the collection system? I don't know what we anticipated. 70, right? So 70, even if you think about 35, that's a big chunk of money. So maybe if we could split it into
Yeah.
4 contracts, it's even better.
Yeah,
15 to
it might
20
work
million
better
is-
with the schedules too.
15 to 20 would weed out the small contractors that you don't want them to, you know what I mean? And then it would be good enough to attract somebody. This is all winter work that people would love that,
Right.
keep people busy and, it would make it, this would be very competitive. We're not concerned with the collector system.
Back on the cost estimating, could you explain the start finishes for everybody as far as what you're gonna be doing in the next 2 or 3 months? 'Cause you got one item here, 130.25 cost estimate, start finish. Because my question is specifically, when does APIC start theirs? When do they finish theirs? When does DHD start theirs? When do they finish it?
Oh, so I had the 30th just on our first cost estimate for town meeting. That was just meant to be like a due date. We were eyeing the end of January, just not to be last minute with it. But now we can go to the end of March then. And refine it there, but we didn't wanna start from scratch. So we've been starting our cost estimate and just constantly updating it since we submitted SRF. When we get the new bids, we've updated it, and now that we have these new height breakdowns for the map, we've been refining it based on that.
And Rich has kind of outed us at around 160. So if it's gonna be way over 160, it would be nice to know that soon.
I think SRF we submitted for 170.
I know.
the bids in Dennis and Yarmouth were better, and I know Diggett, who's been doing all the latest water main contracts, won the first contracts for each of those.
Oh, good.
So they'll probably, the timing actually lines up pretty well with
Yes.
them finishing those contracts. And then our bids coming
And
out.
we've gotten so much better. When we first started with them, they were
They
not
grew
the
quite a bit, yeah.
Sure. It was a startup,
Right,
not very long ago, so
They've done
they've
well.
grown, yeah.
We've had several contractors that have really grown with this project,
Mm-hmm.
clearly.
Started them. That's it, they're on the phone.
Really? You think?
Always
We'll circle.
from
Brundage,
Corey's
Brundage.
Yep.
He
Correct.
really created his business around the water project. Did a great job advertising.
Yeah, he's got a good reputation.
Okay, where are we?
So when do we start the estimate? When do we finish the estimate? What are the dates?
The estimates, well, I mean, I think now I didn't know that we have until March, but we would refine this a little bit better, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
idea was to,
We put that before, I think, one CPC meeting, we were just like, oh, we shouldn't
Wait
do
till
something
March.
last minute.
Right.
So we wanted an original, kind of initial one where we're at the end of this month. And now that we get the 30% beginning of March, that gives us time to refine it from there, constantly refine it. So we've been doing the updating the quantities and working on the cost estimate since last fall. And I know GHD started.
I'm just not used to the process of refining an estimate. Continually.
Understood.
redesign. I'm
yeah,
used to, is the documents, they're not 30%, they're 15%, this is what you're gonna deal with.
Yeah.
Take 2 weeks, 3 weeks to do an estimate. It's kind of a point in time at that point. I'm assuming that's the way the plant will be estimated,
yes,
all right, and you'll be estimating the plant the same way.
correct.
When do you tell them, feel the documents, this is what we're gonna work with at this point as far as creating that estimate? Do you tell them February 1st, do you tell them February 15th, February 28th?
Well, when's the design due?
Well, they're giving us, yeah, they're giving us the first submission, first week of March.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's your answer to Steve's question, is March first.
March.
March 1st
Is
is
the
not
due
right.
date 30% design?
Mhm.
They can do the value engineering or the.
So that way-
estimating Till they get that.
All right,
So what? Jackie's talking about is.
She's doing as
ways of
much as she can.
Keeping an estimate up to date as we go, as more information comes in, because. Hopefully, the trajectory is that estimate gets better and better.
Yeah.
Because as the further out you are, the higher you gotta start.
but professional estimating service isn't sitting next to the designers doing an estimate and keeping up with it. The professional estimating outfit that they're gonna be hiring gets a set of drawings and says,
And March,
March
first week
1st.
of March.
So that's,
So-
that's my point, is March
Yeah.
1st would be the date then.
So for us,
And
you know,
April 1st is that second date, because we can't go
That's,
longer.
in my opinion, that's tight.
so yeah, I agree, it's tight, but usually what we do is like, okay, we have our cost estimator on alert, hey, March 1st, we're getting this,
Right.
you know, preliminary design from GHD, and we want you to produce a cost
Yeah.
estimate within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right, so March 15th, we'll take the feedback from the cost estimator, we'll review it, maybe go back and forth a couple days, and then we submit it back to the town, here's what we think it is.
Okay,
You know what, Jackie, I wonder if we can take the cost estimate from Dennis and Yarmouth and the bids from Dennis and Yarmouth and see how well that worked out. Cause I know, you know, the past few years, it's been, as Peter, it's been all over the map. So we really have not had a successful track record with cost estimators being able to. I mean, we still have some big wild cards if there are tariffs and all that sort of stuff, but,
Yeah.
Full disclosure, we are the OPM in Dennis.
oh, good, okay, great.
Yeah, it wasn't, I went to the interview, but it's not me, it's Paul and Helen.
Oh,
Gordon.
okay, yeah, great,
So we have some inside information we could share
that's
perhaps.
great.
it's all public anyways.
But that'll kind of help us, I think,
Mhm.
look at this year's versus the past, because it's been from COVID to last year, it's been kind of crazy.
Yeah, But you're right, that should give you some sort of a roadmap to go with. Maybe it could be slightly different, the unit processes, the process trains is a little bit different maybe, but at the end of the day, you could scale it back to, all right, this is based on one MGD, this is what they call it, what the actual cost is, right? So.
But, you know, you're absolutely right, like a year ago or more, when we started to get like the 30% contingency cost, like that's not a real number, it's not a, you know. I don't know how to deal with that number other than,
How do you handle your contingencies going forward, looking 10 years in advance? You know, as far as the design for the rest of the year, escalation.
Escalation, so we have midpoint escalation, we build,
Midpoint escalation.
yeah, we do midpoint, we use just usually the ENR, that we use a bunch of different indices. Like the plant, obviously, you know, we review what the estimator would probably be providing for the plant, but we're not gonna take the plant is just unique, it's just a separate animal, right?
Right.
With collection system, we do this all day long,
Right.
it's easy enough to.
I see the collection system as the easy part, yeah.
Right, the
Yeah.
plan's gonna be definitely the,
Yeah.
you know,
Specific.
very specific, and, you know, we kind of rely heavily on the estimator to kind of give us the, you know, their feedback and their, you know, thought process here. We review it for sure, and then we compare it against what Jackie was talking about, Dennis and some other locations,
Yeah.
just to have a good, you know, sense of where we're going. But yeah, definitely, and, you know, and sometimes if things are a little bit different, you assign higher contingency, if there's delays in the bid, you know. Usually what we do is like 6% to midpoint, we assign 6% to midpoint, and then cost of inflation, cost of things, all built in there.
Mhm. They'll all be laid out separately.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When do you build the treatment plant?
When does it get built?
You don't build it in the beginning necessarily, because you don't have anything to put in there.
Yeah,
so
so,
we have to start though.
So
yeah,
do you delay it a little bit? I mean, the collection system's gonna take.
no, usually, I mean, the collection system is gonna go fast, there's no
Yeah.
question, right?
The
So,
first thing that Orleans
yeah.
built was the treatment.
I mean, you could build the plant, you're not accepting flows, right? And then, but the plant has to be ready before you could put any flows into it, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you could build a collection system, the assumption is like, all right, you could build it, but then not too many customers wants to tie in, right? It's gonna take some time for people to be able
So
to,
you wanna get it.
you have to draft your connection policies, your betterment fees, and so on and so forth. Rich will be working on some others, legal and everything. And then now you're gonna have to socialize it with the stakeholders. Like, yeah, you're gonna encourage people to start connecting, right? And then the plan has to be ready by then, right? So that's really the key. The plan can be built anytime.
But you can also build things, as you suggested at the beginning, you know, around what's best for bidding. And like, for instance, Orleans had to do Main Street because there was that 5-year moratorium. So they went in even before wastewater was authorized in Orleans. They authorized putting the pipe down Main
Because
Street.
they had the road
Because they
torn
had
up
to
anyway.
resurface it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So, you know, we can do
No.
things like that if it makes sense with a contractor, and I think that's where
One of the
Jackie's
funding
very good.
requirements, doesn't it have a start date, you have to be in the ground by a certain date on one of the funding sources,
You have to have a contractor on board by June 30th,
contract on board,
contract on board.
not in the ground. Okay,
Well, the other thing that you mentioned, you're right, the other thing that we would be looking at, all right, what does it make sense to start? If you award the contract, you want to be able to be out of the ground. You know, winter construction comes with a cost, right? So if we're talking about building, foundation, excavation, winter conditions, that's gonna add more to the contract. So ideally, what you wanna do is you wanna be able to bid in the winter and have a contractor on board. Or maybe you could start, you wanna be able to not do concrete in the middle of the winter because that's gonna add cost to the contract, right? Whichever way we plan it, I think there's a lot of work to happen,
Yeah.
the excavation.
But we
and
also
that-
have to have that contract before that second town meeting, before next year's town. Right,
Right.
so that if we do have a problem with cost, we.
Right.
So let's just say contractor comes on board, to your point, by June 30th, right? And it takes about a month or two to kind of turn the contract around. It's not out of the question to be able to have the foundation in place by December. Because
Like
December,
mobilize after Labor Day.
December's usually fine.
it's very, yeah,
to
exactly.
build it. And it would make sense probably to build a treatment plant sooner rather than later, because your estimates are fresh. You don't have to worry about escalation and all that. You know, we could stay within the budget on the treatment plant.
And then we were looking at, I believe, 3 years for the plant, and I know what's.
3-year construction period?
Well, including startup and commissioning and everything, yeah.
That's a long time.
Really?
It is a long time. I mean, usually it could be done 2.5 years maybe.
They can start in
Wow.
one work, but
I can't imagine that.
it's,
We got a 250,000 square foot high school doing in 2 years.
Oh, I know, high school is a little bit different. There's no
I guess
process
so.
mechanical, there's no instrumentation, there's no, not as much electrical and the critical components.
Really?
Yeah.
This tiny
I
little.
mean, you got the
tiny little
tanks, the
Beds.
concrete tanks. The beds are easy,
Yeah.
not that
Things are-
critical. Yeah, you get some yard piping, you got the filter building, you got equipment, you got generators, MCC, VFDs. They're also just like a year out from approved
that's
submission.
why it's the lead time.
Lead time.
So they'll start,
Have you thought
submit
about
everything.
pre-purchasing anything?
Tricky. You
No.
could pre-purchase packages. I think GHG is working with Aqua Aerobics, I think, aren't they? Already have the dialogue with them, but
the generator was the big issue.
generator is always about a year out. MCCs and, some, like, the Allen Bradleys, the control panels, those things are just way out of whack.
So definitely get rolling on the treatment plant day
Mhm.
one.
For sure, 100%.
I just think that's a long time. It did
Mhm.
40 million gallon plant in 2.5 years. So it just seems like a long time.
Yep.
So. Stick it 18 months, to be honest with you. But that's not the key either.
And Rick, bonding this is affecting the tax rate. How do you see that?
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to bring up today. Not that we're gonna get too deep at this point, but I'd like you guys to start considering it so we can start honing in on a funding plan. And so some real top level considerations is how are we gonna approach this and think. I'm sold on the idea, philosophically, that this is on the tax rate for everybody in town. And, that opens up some discussion of, well, why do I have to pay for it if I can't connect to it, right?
Sure does.
And so that's why I wanted to start this discussion with you folks here and then bring it to the select board and the finance committee. So you can kind of flush all these things out. But, I guess in the large scale of my thought process is, well, these folks are having to connect to it and they're gonna bear the burden of that cost.
Right.
So that you don't have to. Now, I think it might very well end up somewhere down the line when we're probably all
Yeah.
long gone from here. That others will want the system extended to them too. And, we deal with that when that happens, but for phase one and then an eventual phase two, and then, so that's the other piece of this. If we're thinking that we're bonding and we're gonna start debt service, I'm just gonna use nice round numbers, say 5 years from now. And then phase two is 15 years and that debt service. So we're 20 years out between, which is a pretty nice number because we're 10 years in on the water project.
Right.
So 20 years from now, when we gotta do phase two, we'll be dropping off a bunch of water debt each year. And so, I'm not overly concerned about phase two and funding that. But bringing that to phase one is, I think this has to be on everybody's tax levy, whether you connect or not. And we'll have to talk about what that means to everybody. So you already know some of the, at 160 million. Or let's round it up just a little bit, call it that, if we get subsidized loans at 0%. That's easy math. You take the 170, the 160, the 170, whatever it ends up, divide by 30, that's your debt service every year. It's about $5.5 million at those levels. We got $1.5 million of short-term rentals we can apply to it. And we've got 25% subsidy, hopefully, from Cape and Islands Water Protection Trust, so that's another million something. So now we're down to the 3 million range. And then we've been stewarding, as tried to explain last night, I probably didn't do a good job, but trying to step back on the short-term rental to capture water debt drop-off. So even though it's not real money, the impact that the taxpayer feels as that water debt drops off, we're still raising taxes to pay for other debt, so that when wastewater comes on and you ramp up the short-term rental receipts, you feel the effect of capturing that water debt drop-off. So I think at the end of the day, we're gonna be somewhere along the lines between $1.5 to $2 million that we can't fund if those are the only things we're talking about. You know, that's not considering any betterments, which I'm not sure that is gonna fly for us, or maybe it does, maybe it's a way to assuage the people that aren't connecting. It doesn't, you know, one of the things I used in Yarmouth and other places was a surcharge on the, operating rate. You know, a 25% surcharge on whatever your, operating rate is to pay debt service. I suspect with our limited number of users and the high cost, that's probably not gonna be affordable in our case. And then Jackie's got a few things listed here. If you have debt forgiveness through SRF or USDA, you get some of the planning work done with a Mass Works grant. Maybe there's some opportunities to reduce some costs. And I don't know if this is gonna be possible, and we're probably not gonna do the work, but in Yarmouth, one of the things I spent a ton of time on, the DPW director, was lining up the project, because we knew we had Route 28 projects on the tip. And so the state, we did the work coordination with the state project, and so we saved probably upwards of 30% on the road construction costs, because the state picked up on that. But I don't know that we can do that here.
But you're not gonna bond the whole 160 million or whatever
Yeah.
at one shot. Yes,
Because the treatment plant is gonna be a huge portion of that. So we might be able to take off little chunks, but it won't be like
we
water.
can't, no. Okay.
Sorry. That's what's hard.
I
It's
thought
expensive
trying to knock
because
that
it's
$1
the
million
initial
number
thing
down.
is expensive.
Yep.
If we were just adding pump stations and collection, it wouldn't.
It might be a small amount of ramp up, maybe it's borrowing
Yeah,
over
but if we
2,
issue
maybe 3
contracts
years.
over a period of time,
But we'll issue them as bands, bond anticipation notes, and it gives a year, and we get to that, just like the high school project, you get to the end of the year. You borrow more on the band, and get another year, and then when you get to the final, you know that you're coming in on target, you do your final bond to cover all your short-term notes.
and what Hillary said about the grinders being part of the SRF, is that like some of the add-ons that we got in water?
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
We can do, I mean, that's a policy decision, right? Do we want to, how are we gonna pay for certain things? Are the people that are hooking up gonna pay for them? Is the town gonna pay for a portion? Is it a betterment over time? Is it,
Well, the interesting thing on the connections and the grinder pumps, I think this is the case even for grinder pumps, that you guys know, please don't tell us, but the state septic tax credit expanded from whatever it was, $2,500 all the way up to $18,000 now. And a sewer connection qualifies as a septic replacement. And we got,
that will be good.
and we got the county aqua loan fund. So people can borrow the money from the county, float that for a year, get their state tax credit, get their $18,000 back, and pay off the aqua loan. So I don't know that we gotta be paying for these things. If the state's offering up 18 grand, why would we pay that and not take advantage of it?
And we have been, again, they've been creating some tools for us for the past few years to help, like, we've been putting money into the aqua fund, so it's robust, from the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, so. And I think the maximum interest on that is 5%, so it's either, depending on your income qualification, it's 0 to 5%. To do that.
It looks kind of unique in the fact that you can't really compare how Orleans did it and how done it, because it's all residential here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
'cause-
every town is doing it
Yeah.
differently, but water was the same way. I mean, there was, a woman who used to yell at us at public meetings and she called it the communist water system. Eastham had the communist water system. And it's true, everybody got it, everybody paid for it, it was identical, but, this isn't gonna be like that. We're gonna have to figure
So
out.
in Yarmouth, the only thing we did betterment program for, and I think they continued this after is, phase 1. It was largely commercial, it was all Route 28, Barnstable to Dens.
Oh, yeah.
And, I forget the numbers, but it was, very few residential, all commercial. And they wanted to pay a betterment, Because it was gonna be like cheaper for them instead of managing, you know, the cove, having to do their on-site treatment. And it's gonna enable them to expand, right? So it's worth it, on those. And then promise to the taxpayers was no betterment to the residents. Here, you know, if we're not paying for the connection because they get the credit, maybe we do a small betterment, but, you know, on the 778 parcels. You know, so
It's not gonna make a lot of money.
$10,000 would be 7.7 million, and 5,000 would be 3 something then.
Not a
Might pay for
not a big,
the
percentage, yeah.
So I think the connection will take care of itself when the grinder comes perhaps. So it's really the bond and how are we gonna pay that debt service.
But the good news is we are 10 years into water, and so we are gonna start to have some debt drop
Yeah.
off.
I'm just thinking of the short-term tax impact.
Oh, are they in here at 5?
No, I think they're back then.
Oh.
You have upper, hoping to come out in January, they release the intended use plan, so not that we're not gonna make the list, but we'll see
We're waiting for that.
where we are on the list, and SRF does 50 million a year for that, it's like spaced out. So it lines up with the plant being 3 years and things like
50
that.
million for everybody, right? But, by total.
They cap each loan per year at 50,
Okay.
so we submitted the whole 160, 170, but then they'll usually only give us 50 in the first loan, which we just line out with construction.
Where are we? Yeah, I think we're done. Covered everything.
Before we close up, I took a quick look at your website, marketing piece you sent out,
The one that we sent out?
the link that
Yeah.
Taylor sent out.
Yeah.
So, I, you know, being a salesman, make a couple of, I know you're trying to get as much information out as possible, but, the executive summary is way too long. You know, when I think of an executive summary, I think of a brief description that gets the salient points of
Executive summary of what?
a project.
Oh,
That's
on the
that.
on the
On the main
Website,
page,
okay.
you've got an executive summary,
Okay.
you've got the TWMP, you've got,
I think that's from.
Yeah, I think so too. We can take a look at that.
So
So
that-
it's probably the executive summary from the TWM
Yeah,
that she put out. She just cut and pasted.
Yeah, well, you should get
It's
rid
too
of
long.
it, just, if people glass over and read it, so I mean, if you want people to read it, it's gotta be salient, and it's gotta be right to the point. And like, to the point of, you know, who's gonna be affected, is my property gonna be part of the phase one, so I think,
right.
I'm not trying to solve it all today, but I think it needs some work, and just don't leave it out too long that way. Because people will look at it, if you're now setting flashes out, tell people, if they look at it, and they think, even, they're not going,
Yeah, I agree, Fred, but I think we have Kayla and it's a work in progress, so that's the
Right.
first, that's just getting it up and
Right.
running, and we're gonna be attaching all the detailed information to that website, so that if
I'm
the,
just telling
because
you,
there are 3 people who will wanna read everything,
I
and,
agree with you, but I'm
Okay.
just telling you that when somebody goes and they see an executive summary, they know that that's supposed to be the shortest, most concise description of what I'm looking for, and
Okay.
that to me is the most important piece you ought to have out
Okay.
there, and get it right.
Did you
I
get
know
the
it's
first
criticism,
flash?
just constructive criticism.
No, did you get the first flash?
No, I don't get it.
Are you gonna sign up?
I thought I did. I did go back in water. But I guess I got
I
thrown
just
off.
signed up this morning.
So, I'd be glad to help with the content, Jim.
Great,
That's where I live, sales.
Yeah.
I'll have to check with Kayla. One of the things that we've done in other towns setting up public outreach, you know, you don't wanna create anything new from what we already have, which is I gotta check with Kayla. I'm pretty sure she's doing it all through constant contact. And we have you can do a text to sign up feature, where if you're just watching a meeting on TV, or you get a mailer with a text to this number to get sign up. It's easy, everybody can do it, and you get a text right back saying, you're in, click this link. And
But we had that feature, but they eliminated that feature.
that's still it.
Get another contact.
Well, we were gonna, it's a long story, I mean, there's always reasons, but, yeah, I think she'll try and keep that as current as we
Yeah.
want it, and we,
Well, it's a tool that we're gonna
Yes.
need to use. And as we go further along, it's gonna become more and more important, I think.
Yeah. No doubt, I mean, people went to the website on water to find out if their road was on the plan, I mean, I think it becomes more critical over time, yeah. Okay, we got 15 questions, we do have a little on the flash that you didn't get. There is if you wanna ask questions,
No, but
press the button.
there's also a link on.
Yeah,
on
we
the
got
main page.
15 questions
Were they good questions?
in one day.
Yeah,
A
so-
lot of them were good questions. I mean, they weren't just horrible remarks, which is what you kind of expect. It was decent questions.
Good.
But a lot of them are the questions that we know we can't answer yet.
Right.
You know, how much is this gonna cost? Is it gonna pass by my road? What if I'm not on it? What does that mean for me? If I just bought an IA system, do I still have to connect? Some of those.
Yeah.
Some of them will be one-on-one questions, and we had a lot of that during water too. We assigned people to talk to people. We called people and had conversations, because their scenarios are different, special.
No, but, there's a lot of acronyms to this whole project.
Yes.
So make sure they use the word the acronym PRB throughout, not one place it's explained. I mean, I know what it is, but most people don't,
Okay.
And as I remember at one point, it said that it's a two-pronged approach, the treatment system and the PRB. So I would say to myself, oh, what the hell is a PRB?
Yeah, okay.
Who's in charge of that? Is that Taylor or is Hillary, or they work together?
So who is in charge of getting everything on it, operating the website, loading, unloading, make sure we're on our schedule? That's Kayla. Hillary, Rich, and I are doing all the copy so far. We also get stuff, like we just got a pile of stuff from EPG. So it's just a shared thing. And we all have different opinions, so, we discuss it robustly.
Rich, your operation cost projections, does that have to be done for town meeting also?
No,
No,
but,
okay.
you know, I'm sure that'll come up as a question. I've been carrying about $1.5 million.
Annual.
And these meetings?
Yeah.
Can we just be CC'd so that when the distribution goes out,
Yeah.
we get them as they occur versus?
You run our email, you're done.
Yeah,
And we're gonna have,
We can get fulfilled.
The other thing I want to bring up too is contract calls for monthly reports. Haven't seen any. Is there a need for them? Do you want them? It's in the contract. I can see whether it'd be important later on. If you wanted to post them. For people to see what's going on, but it is a requirement.
what was supposed to be in them. Let me look.
I'm sure it's gonna be a cost, schedule, design, basically. Information you talk about every week. I wanna create work, but it gets distributed to people that way.
All right, 2:11 at 3:00.
11, 3 o'clock, next meeting?